The Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 1, Section 3, Chapter 4. The Psychic Prana. According to the yogi, there is two nerves currents in the spinal column called Pingala and Ida, and a hollow canal called Sushumna running through the spinal cord. At the lower end of the hollow canal is what the yogi call the lotus of Kundalini. They describe it as triangular in form, in which, in the symbolical language of the yogi, there is a power called as Kundalini, coiled up. When the Kundalini awakens, it tries to force a passage through the hollow canal, and as it rises step by step, as it were, layer after layer of the mind becomes open, and all the different visions and wonderful power comes to the yogi. When it reaches the brain, the yogi is perfectly detached from the body and mind, and the soul finds itself free. We know that the spinal cord is composed in a peculiar manner. If we take the figure 8 horizontally, there are two parts which are connected in the middle. Suppose you add 8 after 8 and pile one on the top of another. That will represent the spinal cord. The left one is Ida and the right one is Pingala. And the hollow canal which runs around the center of spinal cord is Sushumna. Where the spinal cord ends is in some of the lumbar vertebra. A fine fiber issues downward and the canal runs up. Even within that fiber, only much finer. The canal is closed at the lower end, which is situated near what is called the sacral plexus, which according to the modern physiology is triangular in form. The different plexes that have their centers in the spinal canal can be can very well stand for a different lotuses of the yogi. The yogi conceives the several centers beginning with the Mooladhara, the basis, and ends up to the Sahasrara, the thousand petal lotus in the brain. So, if we take this different plexus as representing these lotuses, the idea of the yogi can be understood very easily in the language of the modern physiology. We know there are two sort of actions in this nerve current, one afferent and other efferent, one sensory and other motor, one centripetal and other centrifugal. One carries sensation to the brain and one carries from the brain to the body. These vibrations are all connected with the brain in the long run. Several others fact we have to remember in order to clear the way for the explanation which is to come. This spinal cord at the brain ends in the sort of bulb in the medulla, which is not attached to the brain but floats in the fluid in the brain. So that if there is a blow on the head, the force of that blow will be dissipated in the fluid and will not hurt the bulb. This is an important fact to remember. Secondly, we have also to know that all the centers, we have particularly to remember three main centers, that is Mooladhara, basis, Sahasrara, the thousand petal lotus in the brain, and the third one is Manipur, that is the lotus at the navel. Next, we shall take one fact from psychics. We all have heard about electricity and various other forces connected with it. What electricity is no one known, but so far as it is known, it is sort of motion. There are various other motions in the universe. What is the difference between them and electricity? Suppose this table moves, that molecules which compose this table are moving in different direction. If they are all made to move in same direction, it will be through electricity. Electric motion makes the molecule of the body move in the same direction. If all the air molecules in the room are made to move in the same direction, it will make a gigantic battery of electricity of the room. Another point from physiology, we must remember that the center which regulates the respiratory system, the breathing system, has a sort of controlling action over the system of the nervous current. Now we shall see why breathing is practiced. In the first place, that from rhythmic breathing comes a tendency of all the molecules in the body to move in the same direction. When the mind changes into will, the nerve current changes into the motion similar to the electricity. Because the nerves have been proved to show polarity under the action of electric current, this shows that when the will is transformed from the nerve current, it is charged and changed into something like electricity. When all the motions of the body have become perfectly rhythmical, the body has, as it were, become a gigantic battery of will. This tremendous will is exactly what the yogi wants. This is therefore a physiological explanation of the breathing exercise. It tends to bring a rhythmic action in the body and helps us through the respiration center to control the other centers. The aim of pranayam here is to rouse the coiled up power in the muladhara called the kundalini. Everything that we see or imagine or dream, we have to perceive in space. This is the ordinary space called as Mahakash or elemental space. When the yogi reads the thoughts of other men or perceives supersensuous objects, he sees them in another sort of space called as Chittakash, that is the mental space. When perception has become objectless and the soul shines in its own nature, it is called as Chidakash or the knowledge space. When the Kundalini is aroused and enters the canal of Sushumana, all the perceptions are in the mental space. When it has reached that end of the canal which opens into out into the brain, the objectless perception is in the knowledge space. Taking the analogy of electricity, we find that man can send the current only along a wire, but the nature requires no wire to send her tremendous current. This proves that the wire is not really necessary, but that only our inability to dispense with it compels us to use it. Similarly, all the sensation and motions of the body are being sent into the brain and sent out of it through these wires of nerve fibers. The columns of sensory and motor fibers in the spinal cords are the Ida and Pingala of the yogis. They are main channels through which the afferent and efferent current passes or current travels. But why should not the mind send news without any wire or react without any wire? We see this in done in nature. The yogi says, if you can do that, you have got rid of the bondage of matter. How to do it? If you can make a current pass through the Sushumna, the canal in the middle of spinal column, you have solved the problem. The mind has made this network of the nervous system and has to break it so that no wire will be required to work through. Then alone will all knowledge comes to us. No more bondage of the body. What is that is why it is so important that we should get control of the Sushumana. If we can send the mental current through the hollow canal without any nerve fibers to act as wires, the yogi says the problem is solved. He also says it can be done. This Sushumana is in ordinary people or person closed up at the lower extremity. No action comes through it. The yogi proposes a practice by which it can be opened and the nerves current made to travel through. When a sensation is carried to the central reacts. This reaction in the case of automatic centers is followed by motion. In the case of conscious center, it is followed first by perception and second by motion. All perception is the reaction to the action outside. How then do perception in the dream arise? There is then no action from outside. The sensory motion, therefore, are coiled up somewhere. For instance, I see a city. The perception of that city is from the reaction to the sensation brought from outside objects comprising that city. That is to say, a certain motion in the brain molecules has been set up by the motion in carrying nerves, which again are set in motion by external objects in the city. Now, even after a long time, I can remember the city. This memory is exactly the same phenomena, only it is in the milder form. But whence is the action that sets up even the milder form of similar vibration in the brain? Now, certainly from the primary section. Therefore, it must be that the sensation are coiled up somewhere and they, by their action or acting, bring out the mind reaction which we call dream perception or nidra. Now, the center where all these residual sensation are, as it were, store up, is called as Muladhara. The root receptacle and the coiled up energy of action is Kundalini. The coiled up, the coiled up. It is very probable that residual motor energy is also stored up in the same center as after deep study or meditation on external objects. The part of the body where the Muladhara center is situated, probably the sacral plexus, gets heated. Now, if this coil up energy is roused and made active and then consciously made to travel up the Sushumna canal, it as it acts upon center, after center, a tremendous reaction will set in. When a minute portion of energy travels along the nerve fibers and causes reaction from the center, the perception is either dream or imagination. But when by when by the power of long internal meditation, the vast mass of energy stored up travels along the Sushumna and strikes the center, the reaction is tremendous, immensely superior to the reaction of the dream or imagination, immensely more intense than the reaction of sense perception. It is supersensuous perception, and when it reaches the metropolis of all sensation, the brain, the whole brain, has it where reacts, and the result is full blaze of illumination. The perception of the self, as this Kundalini force travels from center to center, layer after layer of the mind, as it were, opens up, and this universe is perceived by the yogi in its fine or causal form. Then alone the causes of this universe, both as sensation and reaction, are known as they are, and hence comes all knowledge. The cause being known, the knowledge of the effect is sure to follow. Thus, the rousing of the Kundalini in the one and only way to attain divine wisdom, superconscious perception, realization of the spirit. The rousing may come in various ways, through the love for God, through the mercy for perfected sage, or through the power of analytic will of the philosopher. Wherever there was any manifestation of what is ordinarily called supernatural power or wisdom, there a very little current, there a little current of Kundalini must have found its way into Sushumna. Only in the vast majority of such cases, people had ignorantly stumbled on some practices which set free a minute portion of the coiled up Kundalini. All worship, conscious or unconscious, leads to this end. The man who thinks that he is receiving response to his prayers does not know that fulfillment comes from his own nature, that he has succeeded by the mental attitude of prayers in awakening up a bit of this infinite power which is coiled up within himself. What does the man ignorantly worship under the various names? Through fear and tribulation, the yogi declares to the world to be the real power coiled up in every being, the mother of eternal happiness. If we put but know how to approach her, the Raja Yoga is the science of religion, the rational of all worship, all prayers, all forms, all ceremonies, and all miracles.